Welcome back. I'm Helen.
I'm James.
And we are global nomads. And in 2024, we sold everything we own to retire early and travel the world full time. This week, we're going to show you the tours that we went on the Africa and Middle East cruise on Norwegian Dawn. Now, this itinerary has been subject to many changes. When we originally booked the cruise about 12 months or so ahead, they were originally scheduled to be that we would leave from Doha in Qatar, and then we would go to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates and Dubai, and then on to Mombassa in Kenya, Zanzibar, Tanzania, 2 stops in the Seychelles, 1 stop in Madagascar, which was originally going to be Nosy Be, and then Reunion Island, and then we would conclude in Mauritius. Shortly before we paid the full balance, that was changed. Actually, I missed Muscat, Oman. That was also in there.
I was waiting for that.
So shortly before we paid the full balance, Muscat, Oman was dropped. We weren't given any reason why.
And Nosy Be.
Nosy Be wasn't dropped at that point, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Antisanana was added.
Yeah, they dropped Nosy Be in Madagascar and changed it to Antisanana. I'm going to say that wrong the whole time. Originally they dropped Muscat, just Muscat, and changed the Madagascar drop. But we weren't given any reasons why.
No, or no port taxes back.
Or a refund on port taxes for ports that we were no longer visiting. So don't know about that one. Bit shady. Norwegian Cruise Lines. And then after that they changed it again, and Nosy Be was put back on the schedule because we could not any longer go to Zanzibar. This was announced after our stop in Mombassa, Kenya, that they were saying that there was a cholera outbreak in Tanzania, and if we had stopped there, then Mauritius would not allow us entry. So they had to drop Tanzania. And instead, Nosy Be and Madagascar got added back on. So this meant we now did 2 stops in the Seychelles and 2 stops in Madagascar. And I think that was the last of the changes.
Nope.
What else did they change?
On the way, we were due to go to Reunion Island.
Oh yeah, Reunion Island. Now this was not Norwegian's fault, in fairness. There was a small matter of a Category 3 hurricane that unfortunately, sadly, did hit Reunion Island, and there was some damage there and several fatalities. So we didn't actually end up going to Reunion Island either, and we had an extra day at sea. Again, not Norwegian's fault. Weather happens. You can't control that one. We lived in Florida for 20 years. We know all about hurricanes. So that was our itinerary as it ended up being. Did I miss anything?
We were originally supposed to have an extra day in Doha, overnight in Doha, but they got rid of that.
Dubai.
Extra night in Dubai.
Yeah, we should have had to overnighted in Dubai, and we didn't do that either. We don't know why. Don't know. We just had a month in Dubai, so we weren't too worried about that. But that was the itinerary, as it should have been, and then what it ended up being.
On this itinerary, even though we had a $50 credit towards a Norwegian cruise line tour, we chose to do all our own tours that we researched and booked independently.
Mainly because they were all about a quarter of the price of the ship tours.
And they weren't very good.
And the ship tours didn't look very interesting, yes.
So we prefer not to be on a coach group of 200 or 300 people. We just did our own thing. Boarding in Doha for us went pretty smoothly, but not for everyone, and we ended up leaving Doha pretty late in the evening, about 8:30. So our first stop was a very short drop off in Abu Dhabi, which is just a couple of 100 miles away from Doha. Despite us going to Abu Dhabi a couple of times, we've never been to the Grand Mosque for one reason or another. So today was the day that we were going to go to the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, and we jumped in an Uber and we were on our way. The mosque was built in 2007 at a cost of about $500 million and has a capacity of an amazing 41,000 people. It has 82 domes of 7 different sizes, and the place is just huge. Just no other way to describe it.
It's huge and it's spectacular. There is an Uber drop-off point where we got dropped off, and just a short walk in will take you to the entrance, where there is of course a shopping mall. What else would you expect to find at a Grand Mosque? The shopping mall is all underground. There's literally cafes, restaurants, shops selling souvenirs, kind of Middle Eastern goods, carpets, all that kind of stuff. Food, like loads of stuff.
Food court.
Literally, it's a shopping mall. And you need to walk through this in true Vegas style. You need to walk through this mall to actually get to the entrance. What isn't clear is that where you buy your ticket though is actually at the other end of the mall, to the entrance. So we actually walked to the entrance and then had to walk back and get our ticket. Once we had our ticket, just to make you aware, there is signs up everywhere, but men do have to have shorts on below the knee, and t-shirt is fine. For ladies, you basically have to have down to your wrists covered and down to your ankles covered, and you will need to wear a headscarf. If you haven't got one with you, you can buy them there of course, but do make sure your head's covered, and literally as you walk into the entrance, before you even get to the mosque, you have to have your head covered.
You can rent clothes.
Yes, you can rent clothes to go in there. It is then quite a decent walk once you get through the entrance and through a short security line. There is quite a long walk then. Again, it's all underground, so you're out of the heat to actually get to the mosque. If you have some mobility issues, there is a golf cart service, a free golf cart service that we actually used to take us down there, and they would drop you off at the lift then to take you up to the entrance.
Hi, welcome to Abu Dhabi, and this is the Grand Mosque.
The last time we were in Abu Dhabi and we were due to go to the Grand Mosque, it was a religious celebration. I can't remember.
It was Eid, yeah.
It was Eid. So because there were so many people there, we chose not to go. Depending upon the time of year, you may have some restrictions, so do check ahead. When you actually go in, there's a path that will take you on a self-guided tour around the mosque. You can't go in everywhere. It is roped off, there is security, but you get a good indication and a good ability to see the majority of the mosque, the outside, the amazing mosaic floor. I think it's the biggest mosaic artwork in the world.
And in the prayer rooms, there's this huge, really spectacular chandeliers. It's really a sight to behold, isn't it? You know, it's just like going to a cathedral or anything. It's really a sight to behold. It's really impressive.
And I don't think it's one of those things that on video, I'm sure it doesn't
capture the scale.
Yeah, trying to even get the whole thing on one shot is practically impossible. The place was just so big. So a really stunning place, and somewhere that if you get the opportunity to go to, it's definitely worth a trip.
We spent probably about 2 and a bit hours there, I should think, walking around, and then we took that same golf cart back to the shopping mall exit, and we grabbed a drink there in the mall before we left. Again, hopped in an Uber, right back to the port. Abu Dhabi port, there's not a whole lot to it. There were a few shops in the entrance area, like souvenir shops, but that was just about it. There wasn't really a whole lot there, and then we got back on the ship.
We jumped in an Uber and headed to the Hard Rock Cafe Abu Dhabi. I'll put a screenshot of it just here. It was the wrong one.
No, I collect Hard Rock Cafe pins, so we thought we were going to get one, but yeah, not at this Hard Rock Cafe. On Valentine's Day was our next stop, and that was Dubai, which was the following day. Now, we'd already spent a month here in November, and we've been back for like 5 days as well. We've been hopping backwards and forwards through Dubai, so we actually stayed on the ship and thought we'd enjoy the ship, take a look around and enjoy an empty ship. And we did, until those of you that follow us will know that in Sri Lanka a few weeks earlier I had fallen and hurt my ankle pretty badly and was wearing a boot. We were walking around the ship, and guess what? I fell over again in the boot. So we didn't end up doing a whole lot that day. We did go for dinner that night. Those of you again that have followed us will know that we used to run a flower shop. So this was actually only our second Valentine's Day in 20 plus years that we hadn't owned a flower shop, and because owning a flower shop, you're very busy on Valentine's Day. So we did take the opportunity to go for dinner and relax. Good afternoon from the Indian Ocean somewhere, the middle of the Indian Ocean. And behind us you can see the line. No, you can't. We've just crossed the equator. So we have just crossed into now the southern hemisphere. Our first time crossing the equator on a ship, so quite interesting. So we just thought we'd share that with you.
Not really a lot different.
It's not, no. I haven't checked if the water goes down the opposite way now. I think that's a myth, isn't it? Isn't that an urban? I think that's an urban
I guess
myth.
we'll try.
Yeah, we'll try.
Yeah.
After 4 sea days, we then made our next stop, which was in Victoria in the Seychelles. And we had a full day here. There really isn't any kind of cruise port terminal here, so you kind of get off in like a freight dock. There was then a short walk where they were making us queue up at one point. And then I think they gave up on trying to make everybody go through security there, because then I think there was just a really long line, and then we got there and it just seemed like they'd given up. Anyway, at the end of it there was a very small market, a few stalls and cars. If you wanted to pick up a taxi or a guide for the day, there was loads of guys here touting for business. And it was about a 10-minute walk into town, so if you didn't want to do a tour you could easily just walk into the main town. We had booked a individual driver and guide with our own car for the day, and we booked that through tour bookers. We found this guy who came highly recommended, and once we found him, which it was a little bit chaotic at the port, not gonna lie, so make sure you've got an eSIM so that you can text your driver on WhatsApp or whatever you're usually all using WhatsApp, and we found him anyway so we could go off for the day.
Our first stop was the Victoria lookout point, which gives you a good view of Mahe, the port, the ship, and Eden, which is a new resort that's currently under construction. Looks like it's going to be huge. Our second stop was the Victoria Craft Village, which was set up to resemble what life used to be like in the 1800s and 1900s.
There was a whole load of stores here, souvenir stores. We didn't bother going in any of them, it's not really our thing. There's also a historic home that you can go and tour as well.
It's a well-preserved plantation house that's free to tour and take photos and videos of.
It's a little bit of a mock-up of the houses in the old days, but
Seychelles is home to over 400 beaches across its 115 islands. And as we drove up the coastal road, we saw some of the onces, or beaches, as we went to our next stop. In the Seychelles, they generally speak 3 different languages: English, French, and a version of French Creole, which seems to be the most popular language, though everyone spoke good English.
Yeah, we did get to practice our high school French a little bit though.
You did?
I did, yes. The French colonised the Seychelles in 1756, and this was followed by British rule from 1814 and a resulting independence in 1976, so fairly recently. So not surprisingly, the majority of the island nations are 75% Christian, and the rest make up of Hinduism and Islam. As a result of the majority of the population being Christian, there are of course a lot of churches, and we found this church along the way, the Ons Royal Church on Ons Royal Beach, and figured we'd go in and take a look.
Our next stop was Ans Tuckamacca Beach, and we went to see the giant tortoises, which are in this enclosure right next to the beach.
And we tried not to give you the OnlyFans version, because when we got here, the tortoises were humping.
Very vocally.
They're very vocal.
Or one of them was.
Yes.
We also found this humpback whale sculpture, which is made of completely recycled plastic. After seeing so many beaches, we then headed back towards the cruise terminal and made a stop at Selwyn Clark Market, which is a fish market that sells handicrafts and goods. But it was towards the end of the day, so it was kind of winding down. From there we drove through the centre and saw Victoria Clock Tower and the I Love Seychelles sign.
The following day, our next stop was going to be La Digue in the Seychelles, which is a much smaller island. We had to tender here, so the lifeboats were deployed for us to be able to reach shore. Now, we had several ports on this cruise that were tender ports, and each time it was kind of a hot mess. Norwegian were not very organised about this. They would tell us we had to go and line up to get tender tickets, and then you wouldn't need them.
Somebody queued from 4 a.m. in the morning to get a tender ticket, and then when she went to get the ticket, she was told, "Oh, don't worry about it," and then she was just sent off.
It was not very well organised at all. But anyway, we did make it to shore. Only a short ride, maybe only about 5 or 10 minutes, wasn't very far, and made it to the small dock there in La Digue. It's a very small dock area. There's literally just a jetty and a couple of restaurants there and a few shops, not much at all.
We also booked this tour through tour bookers, and what became pretty clear from the outset is that the island is so small that when a cruise ship the size of ours comes in, it's all hands on deck and everyone is involved. So we booked a full 8-hour tour, which was a private tour, and our guide was there, picked us up, took us out in a golf cart and dropped us at our first port. Instead of staying with us, she then went away and said, just give me a call, WhatsApp, because we've got WhatsApp available, and she would come and pick us up and take us to our next stop. Our first stop was Source d'Argent, which is quite famous for these rock formations which are a little bit away from the beach. Now, pretty lucky that this was the most famous bit, because this is actually the only bit of the island we saw. We called her about 10 times, we didn't get replies, or she said, I'm in the park and I'm going to pick you up now, and
Didn't show up.
We tried to flag down other golf carts and nobody was interested. We eventually found a security guard who found us a ride into town. We paid the extra fee to go into town, and by that time all the tours were taken. There was nothing else we could do. So we weren't the only people in this situation. There was lots of other people that had problems. The island is just not designed for that size of cruise ship, and we just ended up going back on the tender and going back to the ship.
And I would add, for this tour, I think we paid about $200 for this tour, which should have been a private golf cart for the whole day. And literally we got nothing apart from a 10-minute ride to a beach.
As soon as we tried to get a refund from tour bookers, they were not interested whatsoever in helping us.
Our next stop then, after a couple more sea days, was Mombassa, Kenya. And here we did have a port, but the debarkation process in true Norwegian style, again, was a hot mess. We had lined up early because we had booked our own tour, and literally were in the first few people to try and get off the ship. But when we did, we got to the gangway to then ding your card to get off the ship, and they told us we couldn't get off because they did not have proof that we had our yellow fever vaccination. Even though we had provided this at check-in in Qatar like over a week earlier, and nobody had told us that there was an issue. Basically, anybody over 50, they were not letting off the ship if they said they hadn't seen your yellow fever vaccination, which was the first we'd heard of it, and it caused absolute chaos at the gangway because us and lots of other people were being turned back and refused to get off the ship. And the security officers that were there were not the friendliest either on board. There was no explanation. We didn't know any of this. They just said, you can't get off the ship, you've got to go to customer service. And this was after we'd lined up for over an hour to try and get off the ship, and we're desperate to get off to get to our guide. So it was kind of a hot mess. You did go back up to reception though.
Which was a line, because the majority of the age demographic of that kind of cruise is above 50. So there was a lot of people who were just lining up. They had to go and get their certificate, bring it back down, get it photocopied again, leave it with them, and then we were cleared to get back off the ship.
We had really wanted to do the ship tour actually, to go to East Savo National Park and do a safari. However, it had already sold out, even though it was a really expensive tour.
9 months.
And yeah, 9 months ahead it had already been booked up. So we'd missed out on that, which we were pretty sad about. So on the board, on the Facebook page for the cruise, someone had recommended another guide that they had used. We were a little bit nervous about doing this because our time in Kenya was pretty limited, and we knew it was at least a 3-hour drive to the park and a 3-hour drive back. So we were most concerned about missing the ship. If you've never cruised before, the ship does not wait. If you are not back, it's going to go without you. And Mombassa was not somewhere we wanted to get stranded. But we took the risk, which is why we were keen to get off board and go and find our guide. And it did end up working out. But as we did debark the ship, there were a group of traditional Kenyan dancers and music playing, which was really nice. And everybody in the port was so friendly. I can't say how friendly everyone was. We couldn't find our way to actually get out of the port. We had to walk out of the port. And even the soldier that was there with his big AK-47 or whatever big gun he had was super friendly and smiley. Everybody at the port was super nice. So welcome to Mombassa. We're in a jeep on our way to Zavo National Park. I don't know if you can hear the music playing in the background, but very appropriate. Toto.
To give you an idea of how much time we had in this port, we had approximately 11 hours, and as Helen's already explained, 3 hours to get to the port, 3 hours to get back. Didn't leave a lot of time to actually do the safari, and you've got to take into account that Norwegian had already stolen an hour off us by actually stopping us from getting off the ship. We booked this tour through the Facebook page, finding it through I'm sure a lot of people do this now. You go onto the cruise that you're going to do and you find a Facebook page that someone set up, and then everyone gives information about Norwegian or that particular ship or that particular itinerary that you're doing. So we found this person. It cost us about $500 to do this tour, but our biggest concern was getting back on that ship. 3 hours driving out. I don't know how to describe the drive from the port to the actual East Savo National Park. Interesting was one word I could use for it.
I would say off-road, but it wasn't even off-road at a lot of points. They were actually had road construction, and we were driving on the gravel construction at some points. Then we went off-road, like up at 90-degree hills, and then you were back on the road, and then you were off the road again.
It needed to be something. I mean, everyone was driving Toyota Land Cruisers who were on these tours, and there was probably probably 100
at the stopping point. Yeah, there's a stopping point where they all stopped.
They all stopped, and there was about 100 of these. It was absolutely insane. There was like a convoy of people trying to get through the trucks that were all stationary just to get to this stopping point, which was just outside of the gate. We actually thought it was another distance from there, but it was very close. It was crazy. Fast and Furious, Mad Max, whatever
crazy.
way you want to describe it. It was one of the most interesting and fun drives that we've ever had.
Yeah. And you go through a lot of villages, and all the kids here, they obviously know that you're in these Land Cruisers, so they obviously know that everybody's on tours. All the kids are out and they were waving, and people in the towns were waving. Everybody was so friendly. It was really quite obvious that they sort of welcomed people to the country.
So this was what we thought was the halfway stopping point, was actually only a few minutes away from the actual gate entrance. But everybody came here. There was gift shops where somebody may have bought a wooden elephant, and a rest stop. You get something to eat, go to the bathroom, and this was about 100 miles away from the cruise port. To give you an idea of the cost, if you'd have booked this through Norwegian, if you could have got in, and some people did manage to book it, it was well over half the price. And we booked a private jeep that was just us two for $500. I think it was $500 a person.
I think it was more than $500 a person.
For a shared jeep of up to about 7 people.
Yeah.
So this was definitely best value for us, definitely worth it. And as spoiler alert, we did manage to get back to the ship. So it was a great day for us.
Call me, baby, baby, call me now. So I'm sitting in the parking lot somewhere between Mombassa and Zavo East, and this guy's playing some banging 80s tunes. That's all we've had all the way. I don't know what to tell you. It's been a great drive so far, if a little interesting. So as we got into the park, our guide went to get our tickets, or that's what we thought anyway, and here came the hat scam. So a guy will come up to your Jeep, they did this to all the Jeeps, and he had a whole bunch of hats. And he gets in the Jeep and says, I'm going to pop the top up, or pop the roof up so that we can see out for the safari. And he gives you a hat. And initially I was like, oh, this must be part of the entrance, you know, you get a hat. No, because then when he gives it to you, he asks you for $20 for it. And naive me, I fell for it, of course, and it had an elephant on, so guess what? I kept it. James didn't know, but I kept mine and paid the guys $20.
You can barter, he would have given you 2 for $30. With only about 3 hours in the actual park, we were worried of what we would see, and knew we were taking a chance that we might actually end up seeing nothing at all. Within 15 minutes of entering the park, with the 100 or so other Jeeps, we'd seen elephants, we'd seen zebras, we'd seen emus, and the elephants are African.
Yeah, they're obviously African elephants here, not like the Asian ones we'd seen in Sri Lanka. So African elephants are bigger, they have bigger ears, and they all have tusks, which in Sri Lanka, there's only something like 2% of the elephants there have tusks.
So after coming back, if you'd seen our earlier videos, we'd just done in Sri Lanka a couple of weeks earlier and done safaris in Sri Lanka. This just blew us away because of the amount of animals that we'd seen. Like before, if we'd have saw an elephant in Sri Lanka, we would have all stopped, all the Jeeps would have stopped. The elephants had to be in a prime position, there has to be lots of them, else you just carry on, because there's just hundreds or thousands of the...
We saw a lot of elephants.
A lot of elephants and a lot of zebras and emus, and it was amazing. We did not see a lion.
No, sadly, or a giraffe.
Or a giraffe. But on the bingo card, we ticked a lot of boxes, and we did it in such a short period of time. 3 hours. I mean, we've been on safari in Sri Lanka, and we were there for 8, 9, 10 hours. We just had 3 hours. It was amazing. I mean, it was absolutely, truly amazing, and convinced us that regardless of the cost, we will be doing an African safari. I think we both knew that.
We
and
did.
This was just a taster.
This convinced us, though.
This convinced us that we are definitely going to go to Africa and do a safari.
So we actually went to Zavo East National Park. There's Zavo West as well, but East is where the main kind of attractions are, where the main animals are. And Zavo East is made up of over 13,000 square kilometres, or 5,300 square miles. So this is why we were concerned that we potentially would not see any animals. And as we said, when there was a whole lot of Jeeps went in at the same time, there had to easily be 100 Jeeps. Literally within about 10 minutes, we were the only Jeep we could see with one other. So when we did see animals, it wasn't like there was 50 Jeeps around, 3 elephants or anything like that. That never happened, at least where we were. We were on our own just with one other Jeep.
And none of the guides were radioing between each other to tell you about animal spotting, just because there was so many animals. Our guide told us about him witnessing zebras being born, and some of the amazing things that he'd seen there. But you were really just left on your own just to drive through the park. At one point, the driver put his foot down and started to speed through the park and towards the exit. What we didn't realise is that there'd been a radio ahead to say that the traffic was so bad at the port, they wanted everybody back within 2 hours of the ship leaving because of the problems with the traffic. Norwegian were trying to organise a police escort to get all of the Jeeps back because the traffic was so bad, and we're not sure what actually happened with that police escort, because I'm not sure how the police cars would have got through. I'm not sure the police cars would have driven in the same way as our Jeep driver did, because he made it back in just over 2 hours.
2.25 hours.
2.25 hours. It was one of the most fun, enjoyable, crazy, stupid, amazing, drives of my life.
Now we should add that our driver actually in his other life is an ambulance driver. So I felt pretty confident with his driving abilities, and literally we would go on one side of the road, then we go to the other side of the road, then we go off-road, then we go on the construction part, then we go up a hill, then we go back on the other side of the road.
Then we turn around and go again because it was blocked off. It was a perfectly good road and they just blocked it off.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I felt safe. I didn't feel unsafe at any time. But it was, fun. It was a lot of fun.
I have to say that this is the tour that we really wanted to do out of the whole ship. And this was the highlight of the tour. The highlight of the whole...
Of the cruise.
Of the cruise. It was fantastic. 3 hours for $500 probably doesn't sound like it's worth it. It was worth every penny.
And we will leave our driver's details in the comments as well, so that if you are interested in picking him up as a guide, which I would highly recommend, he was a really nice guy, then you can find him. Our next stop was Nosy Be in Madagascar, and if you remember at the start of the video we said this was a port that was originally on the itinerary, then it was removed and replaced with Antisanana. And then because we had to cancel Zanzibar at short notice, because remember Mauritius were not going to let us in because of the cholera outbreak, so they did add Nosy Be in as a replacement for Zanzibar. I was kind of disappointed we didn't get to Zanzibar, but at least we did get replaced with another port day, not another sea day, as this itinerary was already very sea day heavy.
So again, Nosy Be is a tender port, and we went through the normal Norwegian cruise line procedure of gathering in one of the studios on board, queuing for a ticket, and then just all hell breaks loose and everyone just runs off the ship. So we did that, managed to get off, and we arranged for our tour guide that we'd booked in Antisanana, which was our next day stop, and just said, look, we're here, can you organise a tour for us in Nosy Be as well at very short notice? And he said, absolutely, not a problem, we'll get that taken care of, because obviously everybody was doing that, and arranged to meet us. When we got off, he was nowhere to be seen. Nothing that we actually organised was actually planned. They tried to put us on a group tour. We booked an individual tour. Didn't know what he was doing. Vehicle looked like it wasn't going to make it out the port, and it just became a bit of a disaster. So it didn't work out that well. So we ended up going and finding another tour directly off the port, which was not ideal. And we just went down the pier, found somebody, and they took us for a tour of the island.
Now, Nosy Be is an island off of Madagascar. It's not actually on the mainland of Madagascar. It's a very, very small island. If you're not aware, Madagascar is a very poor country. It's not equipped for cruise ships. It was a great place to visit. I loved it, but it was very chaotic. There was a lot of police security when we got off. I felt perfectly safe, but they were obviously there for a reason. It was like, as you would expect, maybe if you have a preconceived idea about what an African nation might be like, it was a bit chaotic. But we did manage to find another tour company, who actually, most of these tour companies were from Antisanana. I'm going to say it wrong all the time. And they'd come to Nosy Be because they had been notified that the ship was coming. Otherwise, I don't think that it's really an area that's equipped to deal with a cruise ship of our size.
Our new guide wanted paying in cash. Unfortunately, there was a few communication problems between finding out which currency he actually wanted paying in and what the exchange rate was, because the internet, even with Airlo, was absolutely appalling. We couldn't work out what the exchange rate was, or
we only had US dollars.
They didn't want US dollars. They took us to an ATM, which was fine, but it took us a while to actually work out how much we needed to pay to be able to get on the tour and actually get going. The currency is Malagasy Ariari, and at the current exchange rate is about 4,400 to the dollar. So that's pretty complicated to work out when we're paying a guide $60 US. But we managed to get there and we managed to work it out.
Like this, okay? Flat your hands. So welcome to Lemurland. Nosy Be. Nosy Be, okay.
Cheers.
Yeah. Like this. And as with all animals, they only came to me because I had banana. If I didn't have banana,
No friend.
no honey.
No honey, no money.
Yeah.
How soft are they?
Really soft. That's lovely.
It's a common brown lemur. That's the name of the species.
Oh, you want to come home with me?
So our guide asked us where we wanted to go, and our first stop was going to be Lemurland. This is, I would say it's a zoo, but it's not really a zoo.
It's a private sanctuary.
It's a private sanctuary, and there's no cages or anything else, and all the lemurs are just allowed to roam wild and do their thing, and they're all very friendly. You can walk through there and see 6 different species of lemur, and I think we saw all 6.
We did. As you arrive, there will be a guide, and you'll be assigned a guide who will walk you through basically and tell you about what the animals are that you're going to see, because there's also giant tortoise. There was some different varieties of turtles as well as the lemurs, which obviously were the main attraction. Of course, he wants a tip at the end again, so fortunately we had cash, so we were able to do that. This was a real highlight for me. The guide gave us fresh banana and put banana in our hands, and then the lemurs would come down and sit on you and eat the banana out of your hand. Not all of them did. They're free to do what they want to do if they weren't hungry. Plenty of them stayed in the trees. I'm big on not feeling like we're exploiting animals, so I'm not a huge fan of zoos, and I try and check out very carefully where we're going. I felt like this place was pretty ethical. All the animals looked well cared for, they were well fed, it was clean, and as I said, no cages. So if the lemur was up in the tree and he didn't want to bother with you, that's where he could stay. He didn't have to interact with the tourists if he didn't want to.
The guides also tell you what you can and cannot feed them. They bring the food, and there were people feeding them food that was not applicable to their diet, and the guides would tell the people not to give the lemurs that food. And so we had an amazing time.
I really enjoyed this place, yeah.
This was quite a short tour because we'd lost some time with our previous guide not turning up. So we drove from Lemurland, we drove along the coast and had a bit of a tour before we ended up back in the main city, and we went into a local market.
This was a very, very local market, so mainly fruits and vegetables, some souvenirs, lots of people selling spices and vanilla. I'm sure you could have got it for very good prices if you wanted some. We just had a quick walk around, very interesting to see, but a little bit chaotic and very hot. One of the final stops we made just before the port was a local lookout point next to one of the colonial government buildings, and our guide, I guess all things work out for a reason, because our guide was actually a really nice guy, and he wanted to do a selfie with us, and we took a selfie with him, and he asked us a lot about England and the United States and what it was like to live there. He was very interested in that, but yeah, a very nice guy, very nice guy.
The guides that we spoke to were very interested in going to the United Kingdom or the United States to work. The country is very poor, and do not take Madagascar based upon a Disney movie. It's not like that at all.
It was a lovely place. I actually really enjoyed it, yeah.
I'd definitely go back.
Yes.
We head back to the ship, and again we are greeted with some local dancers, and then when we are actually in the tender, we find a couple of local vendors who want to take the last opportunity to sell you some goods, a model ship, perhaps some drinks, before you actually leave the port. They were going to try and get everything they could out of you before you left.
The following day, as it was just a short journey away, was our next stop in Madagascar on the mainland, Antisanana. This was where we had originally booked our Madagascar guide, but because of the previous day's issues, we messaged them and said, don't worry, we're not going to go with you. We did, however, book with a local company while we were on the ship. We literally WhatsApped the guy at like 8 p.m. The night before and said, can you do a private city tour for us tomorrow? And we'll leave the details in the description. They were a big tour company, and we literally messaged him 8 p.m. the night before, and he messaged us right back and said, yes, no problem. And sure enough, he was there.
We met our tour guide just at the edge of the port, and then we headed to our first stop, which was Amber Mountain National Park. Madagascar was a French colony from 1896 until 1958 and declared total independence in 1960. The islands are huge at 228,000 square miles, although poverty is quite rife.
The island is made up of 8 ethnic groups, with the majority at 85% practicing Christianity. 7% offer no religion, and the rest is made up of Islam and others. The official languages in the island, there's actually 2, are going to be Malagasy and French. It appeared to us at least that most people spoke French, although our guide did speak excellent English, and they do learn English in school because I was having a chat to her about that.
The population of Madagascar is just under 32 million people.
Good morning from Madagascar. Today we are in Amber Mountain National Park. We're just on our way to see one of the waterfalls here, and it's absolutely beautiful. The trees, the rainforest are absolutely stunning.
So welcome to the sacred waterfall.
Amber Mountain Park.
Amber Mountain.
This waterfall was possibly the most spectacular one I've ever seen. It was absolutely stunning in this area, and because we had a private guide, we made it here before all of the tour groups got here from the ship, so we literally were the only people here. This park is actually home to the world's smallest species of chameleon, and I don't know how, but our guide found 2 or 3 of them actually. This thing is literally like the size of your baby finger, your pinky finger nail. It's absolutely tiny.
She knew exactly where they would be and just picked up the leaves and found it and then put it back. It's also the home to the coolest chameleon, as you can see here walking across the road. Absolutely no reason why it was doing this stepping dance thing.
This walk,
but it looked cool. So this is a raspberry.
a Madagascar raspberry.
A Madagascar raspberry. It looks nothing like what I think of a raspberry.
Tastes like a raspberry?
Yeah, but it's got like a soft inside.
Oh yeah.
We saw lots of wildlife on this walk, including this huge snake, which by the time we'd gone to see the waterfall, it had gone, don't know where, but we weren't saying hello to it for too much longer.
You also had to watch where you were walking to make sure that you didn't walk into a giant spider's web through your face as well.
It was a true rainforest type environment. There were waterfalls all over this park, and this was our next waterfall. Unfortunately, the rain had been so bad it washed down the bridge and we couldn't actually get to it, so we tried to hike along the edge in a not very safe manner to try and get to look over the edge.
Did the water come up? It's the eucalyptus.
Eucalyptus, yes. From Australia.
We then drove along the coast and we came across Sugarloaf Mountain, which is this mountain in the middle of the bay. No one is allowed on this for religious reasons. It is believed that if you do enter this island, the island will disappear and move, such as Lost, John Locke.
If you remember that TV show, Lost.
Remember that TV show in the early 2000s, many years ago.
So our next stop was the iconic Baobab tree. If you've ever seen anything about Madagascar, you will have seen these trees. I desperately wanted to go to the forest where there's a whole forest of these trees, and it's a very iconic view. It's further to the south of the island though, so we weren't able to get there on this occasion. But we did get to see the baobab trees. We visited these ones at the side of the road and then went to another spot further into the island, just us. The tour groups didn't go there. And we saw this extremely old baobab tree. And then after seeing the trees, which I was very happy about, and another snake, we made our way back to the ship. This did end up being our final stop on the cruise. We were supposed to go to Reunion Island, as we said. Unfortunately, the hurricane stopped that, so we had a couple of days at sea before we made it into Mauritius.
So that concluded the ports for this cruise, and after a couple of days later, it was time to get off the ship. I think overall, we really enjoyed this cruise. We went for the cruise, for the itinerary, not the ship.
Which was a good job, really, because
was a
the
good
ship
job.
wasn't that great.
Norwegian would not be our first choice of cruise company. We've cruised with many cruise companies, and we've done over 40 cruises. But sometimes you have to go with the itinerary, and this itinerary was pretty spectacular.
Despite the changes.
Despite the changes and constant changes, I have to say the highlight for me was Mombassa, Kenya. Even though we only got to do a safari for 3 hours, it was worth every single penny that we paid and more.
I agree, and I actually believe Norwegian have pulled this itinerary now. They're pulling Africa itineraries. I would hazard a guess, because it's mainly due to the logistics of being able to restock. I would imagine in some of the ports would be tough, and also maybe dealing with the local port authorities in some of the more developing countries, I would imagine could also be pretty challenging. For us, like we said, a lot of what we saw, though, the disorganisation was really down to Norwegian, not the local port authorities, though. I would agree, Kenya was probably my highlight too, although I love the lemurs in Madagascar.
Yes.
What was particularly nice about this itinerary is that we went to some of the places that would potentially be a little bit more difficult to get to. It was a shame we didn't get to Reunion, because that, again, it's such a tiny nation in the middle of the ocean. You literally, you're not going to jump on a plane and say, I'll go to Reunion for 2 weeks. And the same with Madagascar, really. We got to see 2 places in Madagascar fairly easily, despite the issues with the guide. We still got to see what could be more challenging destinations fairly easily. So I really enjoyed it. Definitely some places on there we want to go back to.
Yes.
And of course we got to end in Mauritius, and we're able to spend some time in Mauritius at the end too. So as ever, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed our quick tour of the ports that we did on this cruise. If you are interested in seeing more details on Norwegian Dawn, we did do another video last week, so you can check that out, where we gave you a whole rundown and a view of the ship. But thanks for watching this time, and
Like and subscribe.
we'll see you again next time.